It feels like everyone else's doors are opening while your life is still sitting in silence. You have prayed, prepared, waited, and wondered whether heaven forgot your name. But this pause is not always punishment. Sometimes it is protection. By the end of this message, you will understand why the waiting room exists and how to find peace inside a delay that may be saving you. If this word found you at the right time, type 777 below, like this video, and subscribe to this channel. There is a kind of pain people do not talk about enough. It is not the pain of obvious loss. It is not the pain of a door slamming in your face. It is not even the pain of total confusion. It is the pain of being ready in your heart while your life still looks still. That kind of waiting can wear on a person in ways other people do not always understand, because from the outside, nothing dramatic is happening. You are not necessarily falling apart in public. You are not always in crisis. You are just there, in between, watching time move, watching other people announce breakthroughs, watching engagements, promotions, relocations, answered prayers, open doors, new seasons, visible momentum. And meanwhile, your own life feels like a waiting room. You are sitting with your hopes in your lap, sitting with questions no one around you can answer, sitting with the tension of having enough vision to know there is more, but not enough movement to touch it yet. That is a very specific kind of frustration. Because it is one thing to grieve something that is clearly gone. It is another thing to keep sensing something is coming and still have no idea why it has not arrived. That is what makes the waiting room so exhausting. It is not empty enough to let go. It is not active enough to relax. It keeps you suspended between expectation and silence. And if you have lived there for any length of time, you know how quickly it can start messing with your mind. You begin questioning your timing, then your discernment, then your worth, then your discipline, then your faith. You start doing quiet math in your head. I did the work. I learned the lessons. I let things go. I became more honest. I got healthier. I prayed more. I obeyed what I knew to do. So why does it still feel like I am waiting in a room where my number has not been called? That question can become very lonely, especially when people around you mean well but do not understand the weight of delayed hope. They tell you to be patient. They tell you your time is coming. They tell you not to compare. They tell you to trust the process. And maybe all of that is true, but truth can still feel thin when your spirit is tired of sitting in uncertainty. Because what makes the waiting room hard is not only that you are delayed. It is that delay can start sounding personal. You begin hearing it as rejection, as punishment, as proof that something is wrong with you, as evidence that you missed your moment, as confirmation that other people are somehow more chosen, more favored, more ready, more visible to God than you are. That is the emotional warfare of waiting. It tries to turn stillness into a verdict, and once that happens, the frustration deepens. Now you are not only waiting, you are interpreting the wait through pain. You are taking a quiet season and turning it into a statement about your value. You are watching everyone else move and quietly asking yourself what invisible flaw keeps your own life from opening. That question has broken a lot of peace, because comparison is always loudest in seasons where movement feels slow. When your life is active, you do not have as much time to stare at someone else's timeline. But when you are in a pause, every announcement can feel magnified. Every success story can sound louder than it should. Every open door in someone else's life can press on the bruise of your own unanswered questions. And that is where a person can start shrinking inward, not because they stopped believing, because they got tired of carrying hope in public. You stop talking about what you are expecting. You stop sharing what you are praying for. You stop naming what you sense is still possible, not because the vision died, but because the weight has made your heart more private. That happens to a lot of people in the divine waiting room. They become quieter, not always because they are faithless, but because hope delayed has weight. It changes how you speak. It changes how much you share. It changes how freely you let people into the parts of you that are still waiting to bloom. And here is what most people never say out loud. Waiting can make you feel embarrassed. Embarrassed that you are still hoping. Embarrassed that you are still in process. Embarrassed that you do not have the update everyone expects. Embarrassed that your life has not moved at the pace you imagined. Embarrassed that you keep telling yourself to trust and still wake up some days with questions in your chest. That embarrassment is heavy because it makes you feel isolated inside a season that already feels hidden, and this is where people begin making dangerous inner agreements. Maybe I should settle. Maybe I expected too much. Maybe I should stop believing for that. Maybe I should just take whatever opens next. Maybe I should stop asking why, and just force something to happen. That is usually the moment when frustration becomes vulnerable to counterfeit movement. Because when people get tired of waiting, they become more likely to accept what they would have rejected in a clearer season: a rushed relationship, a misaligned opportunity, a door that opens quickly but carries no peace, an environment that flatters their impatience while quietly draining their future. That is what makes the waiting room spiritually intense. It does not only test your patience, it tests your appetite. It reveals how desperate you have become to escape the discomfort of delay. And that is the part that matters, because many people think the greatest danger of waiting is stagnation. Sometimes the greater danger is premature movement. A tired person can call the wrong door and answer just because it finally opened. A lonely person can call the wrong connection destiny just because it finally arrived. A frustrated person can call the first available option provision just because the silence had become unbearable. That changes the whole meaning of the waiting room. Now it is not just a place where nothing is happening. It is a place where discernment is being tested, and that is why the frustration feels so sharp. Something in you knows the next move matters. Something in you knows not every door deserves your yes. Something in you senses that what is delayed may still be sacred, and what is immediate may not be safe. But the body still gets tired. The heart still gets restless. You still have nights where you ask God why the room feels so quiet. You still have moments where the stillness feels offensive, because you know you are not dead inside. You have more to give, more to build, more to become, more to release, more to step into. And that makes waiting feel like a contradiction. It feels like your spirit is ready, but your life keeps telling you to sit down again. That tension is real, so let us name it clearly. The frustration of the waiting room is not proof that you are ungrateful. It is not proof that your faith is fake. It is not proof that you are doing the season wrong. It is often proof that you can feel the gap between where you are and what you sense is possible. Sensitive people feel that gap deeply. They feel when a season is stretching longer than they expected. They feel the discomfort of watching life move around them. They feel the ache of being internally aware that more is coming while externally, nothing appears to be changing fast enough. And if they are not careful, that ache can start turning them against the very season that is trying to prepare them. But here's the deeper layer. What if this delay is not only about timing? What if it is also about protection? That question changes everything. Because most people only know how to interpret delay through loss. They think if it did not happen yet, something is wrong. If the door did not open yet, I must be overlooked. If the blessing did not arrive yet, I must be behind. If the relationship did not form yet, if the opportunity did not break through yet, if the season did not change yet, then I must be stuck. But what if the delay is acting like a spiritual firewall? What if it is not merely holding you back? What if it is filtering what reaches you before it reaches you? A firewall does not exist to punish the system. It exists to protect what is valuable from what would enter too soon, too fast, or in the wrong form. That image can bring a lot of peace if you really sit with it, because suddenly the delay is not just absence. It is discernment in action. It is God not letting everything through simply because you asked for movement. It is heaven not confusing your desire for readiness. It is protection standing at the gate of your life saying, not yet, because this arrival would ask more of you than your current structure can safely hold. That is hard to hear when you are tired. But it is also merciful, because many people are asking for doors they are not yet built to survive, not because they are incapable forever, because capacity is still being formed. The wrong timing can turn a blessing into a burden. The wrong timing can turn visibility into pressure. The wrong timing can turn love into dependency. The wrong timing can turn opportunity into collapse. The wrong timing can place weight on a version of you that still needs deeper roots. And sometimes the delay is simply making sure the roots get stronger than the reward. That is not denial. That is protection. You may look at someone else's life and think they are ahead because they arrived faster. But faster is not always safer. Earlier is not always wiser. Open does not always mean ordained. And the waiting room exists partly because some things need to be filtered before they reach you. Some doors need to be tested. Some environments need time to reveal themselves. Some opportunities need space to show whether they are truly aligned or simply flattering your impatience. That is what a spiritual firewall does. It protects your future from your current hunger. And hunger is dangerous when it gets strong enough to call anything relief. Maybe if that door had opened last year, you would have entered it with too much insecurity and turned the opportunity into pressure. Maybe if that relationship had formed earlier, you would have called emotional intensity love and ignored the warning signs. Maybe if that platform had opened sooner, your gift would have grown faster than your grounding. Maybe if that money had come earlier, it would have amplified habits you had not yet healed. Maybe if that promotion had landed before your inner life stabilized, the title would have exposed every crack you were still hiding from. That is not punishment. That is mercy wearing the face of delay. And once you start seeing that, your season changes meaning. The waiting room stops being a place where heaven forgot you. It becomes a place where heaven is screening what gets access to your life. It becomes a place where timing is being governed by more than your current emotions. It becomes a place where hidden dangers are being kept outside your field of vision while your foundation quietly strengthens. That does not mean the wait feels easy. It means the wait may have intelligence, and that changes how you carry it, because now you can ask a better question. Not only why is this taking so long, but what is the season protecting me from? What in me is still being reinforced? What would have crushed me if it came in the shape I wanted before I had the strength to hold it well? Those questions do not erase the frustration, but they redeem it. They remind you that stillness is not always empty. Sometimes it is guarded. Sometimes it is sacred. Sometimes it is the only thing standing between you and a version of success, love, visibility, or responsibility that would have arrived before your soul had the structure to carry its weight. And that is where peace begins to return, not because the room suddenly opens, but because you stop assuming the room is against you. You begin to realize there may be a hand on the door for a reason. You begin to realize delay may be doing more than disappointing you. You begin to realize protection is not always loud enough to feel comforting while it is happening. Sometimes it feels like silence until much later. And once you see that clearly, another truth starts rising. It is not enough to wait for the blessing. You have to become someone who can carry it without breaking under it. Because what looks like delay may also be outgrowing the version of you that would have mishandled what you were still asking for. And that is where the next layer begins. And that is where the season becomes even more humbling. Because sometimes the delay is not only protecting you from the wrong thing, it is protecting the right thing from the wrong version of you. That truth can be hard to sit with, especially when you know your heart is sincere. You're not asking for something evil. You're not begging for destruction. You are not trying to run ahead just to be reckless. You simply want what you feel called toward. You want movement. You want fulfillment. You want release. You want to step into the thing you have been carrying in seed form for so long. But sincerity is not the same thing as readiness. That is one of the deepest lessons in the waiting room, because many people are genuinely pure in desire and still premature in structure. They want the blessing for beautiful reasons, but they have not yet become the person who can carry the full weight of what they are asking for without turning it into pressure, pride, panic, dependency, or collapse. That does not make them bad. It makes them unfinished. And unfinished people often get offended by delay because they think delay is questioning their worth, when really it may be developing their capacity. There is a difference. Worth says you matter now. Capacity asks what you can sustain. Worth is not earned. Capacity is built. A lot of people confuse those two things in hidden seasons. They think if the door is not open yet, maybe they are not enough yet. But being enough as a person and being ready for a certain level of responsibility are not the same conversation. God can love you completely and still keep you in process. Heaven can affirm your value and still say you are not built for that weight yet in the form you are now. That is not rejection. That is wisdom, because some blessings are not fragile at all. They are heavy. They require emotional muscle. They require nervous system maturity. They require discernment under pressure. They require humility when attention increases. They require restraint when money grows. They require boundaries when opportunities multiply. They require inner stability when people start affirming you at a level that could easily intoxicate an unhealed ego. Heavy blessings crush light structures. That is why premature blessings can be dangerous. Not because the blessing is evil, because the person receiving it may still be too dependent on outcomes to handle it cleanly. Imagine getting the relationship you prayed for while still needing love to rescue you from yourself. Imagine receiving the platform you wanted while still being controlled by approval. Imagine stepping into financial increase while still spending emotionally. Imagine receiving influence while still measuring yourself through comparison. Imagine getting the open door you asked for while still lacking the boundaries to guard your peace once the door swings wide. The blessing is good. But in the wrong season, it can become exposure. That is what many people do not understand about divine timing. It is not only about when the opportunity appears. It is about whether your inner life has enough spine to remain whole after it appears, because what you receive will eventually test what you have become. This is why some people lose themselves in the very thing they once begged for. They prayed for love, then disappeared inside attachment. They prayed for visibility, then got ruled by public opinion. They prayed for success, then became anxious at the thought of losing it. They prayed for acceleration, then realized their habits, identity, and rhythms were still built for a smaller life. The blessing did not fail them. It revealed what had not yet been strengthened. That is why the waiting room can be merciful even when it feels offensive. It gives you time to outgrow the version of yourself that would have mishandled what you are still asking for. And sometimes that outgrowing happens so quietly that you do not even realize it while it is underway. You become less impulsive, less desperate, less impressed by appearances, less easily seduced by quick wins, less likely to call emotional intensity destiny, less likely to force what does not carry peace, less likely to idolize a rival, less likely to mistake access for assignment. That is growth, and it matters because blessings do not only need desire, they need a container. The waiting room builds the container. It stretches your patience. It confronts your appetite. It exposes your fantasies. It makes you face what you were calling ready when you were really just tired of waiting. That last part is important. A lot of people were not truly ready. They were merely exhausted. And exhaustion will call almost anything provision if it promises relief fast enough. That is why the pause in your life may be doing something deeper than making you stronger. It may be teaching you the difference between craving and alignment. Craving says, I need something to happen now so I can breathe again. Alignment says, I am willing to wait for what fits the truth of who I am becoming. Those two voices can sound similar when you are tired, but they lead to very different lives. Craving chooses to escape discomfort. Alignment chooses to honor design. And this is where the waiting room starts becoming sacred, because it gives you the chance to outgrow the need for premature relief. It lets old fantasies fall off. It lets false timelines break. It lets shallow definitions of success die. It lets you become less seduced by what looks good quickly and more loyal to what is actually right. That kind of maturity is expensive. You usually do not gain it in fast seasons. You gain it in hidden ones, in the seasons where you have to keep showing up without applause, in the seasons where your faith has to survive without visible evidence every week, in the seasons where your inner life becomes your primary proof that something real is still happening, in the seasons where obedience matters more than momentum. That is when something in you gets purified. Your motive becomes cleaner. Your vision becomes steadier. Your spirit becomes less noisy. You stop wanting things just because they would make you look healed, chosen, desired, or successful to other people. You start wanting them because they actually fit your calling, your peace, your values, and your design. That is outgrowing premature blessing. It is not merely waiting longer. It is becoming the kind of person who no longer needs the wrong timing just to soothe an ache. And once that happens, the next shift becomes possible. You stop asking only, when will this happen for me? And you start asking, what would it take for this to enter my life in a way that does not fracture me? That question is powerful because it shifts you out of victimhood and into stewardship. Now you are not just counting days, you are developing weight-bearing strength. Now the season is not empty. It is formative. Now the delay is not just a missing answer. It is an environment where your soul is being taught to carry more without breaking. That brings us to the deeper layer of alignment. Because there is a major difference between something arriving and something fitting. Some doors open because you knocked hard enough. Some open because your emotions were hungry enough to call them divine. Some open because you were available. Some opened because the opportunity was convenient. Some opened because the opportunity was convenient. Some opened because the season around you rewarded movement, not necessarily wisdom. But true alignment is different. True alignment does not just open. It settles. It carries peace even when it stretches you. It carries clarity even when it requires courage. It carries congruence between your inner life and your outer movement. It does not ask you to betray your center just to keep it. It does not flatter your ego while quietly draining your spirit. It does not demand you become someone false in order to maintain access. That is what alignment feels like. Not always easy, but clean. And when you have been in the waiting room long enough, this becomes one of the greatest gifts of the delay. You become harder to impress and easier to align. You start feeling the difference between a door that stimulates you and a door that fits you. You start hearing the difference between opportunity and assignment. You start noticing when something merely excites your impatience versus when something actually resonates with the life God is building in you. That discernment protects a lot of futures, because without it, people chase movement and call it destiny. They say yes because it came fast. Yes because it was flattering. Yes because they were lonely. Yes because they were lonely. Yes because they were tired of silence. Yes because other people approved. Yes, because the thought of waiting any longer felt unbearable. But alignment is not just about what you can get into. It is about what can hold you without violating you. That is a much deeper question. Can this relationship hold my peace? Can this opportunity hold my integrity? Can this environment hold my becoming? Can this platform hold my humanity? Can this blessing hold the real me? Or will I have to split myself just to keep it? That is where synchronization starts. Because the right thing at the wrong time often feels like pressure. The right thing at the right time feels weighty, but coherent. You may still be stretched, but you are not internally divided. You may still be challenged, but you are not at war with your own spirit just to stay inside it. That is a sign. Alignment does not mean the absence of nerves. It means the presence of peace underneath the nerves. And that peace matters because when you are synchronized with true alignment, you are no longer trying to drag a closed door open with the strength of your frustration. You are learning to move with what is actually opening in step with who you have become. That is why some delays last until the version of you praying catches up with the version of you receiving, not because heaven is cruel, because the timing has to fit both the promise and the person. A delayed blessing is not always heaven saying no. Sometimes it is heaven ensuring you can carry the weight. That is the recap many people need because so much frustration in waiting comes from assuming that faster would have been kinder. But faster is only kind if the soul underneath it is stable enough for what arrives. Otherwise, faster can be a setup. Faster can feed ego, attachment, fear, dependence, self-sabotage, or collapse. Faster can hand you something beautiful before your internal house has the beams to hold it. The waiting room says, strengthen the beams. That is why synchronization is so holy. It is not merely about getting what you want. It is about becoming a match for what is true. It is about your character, your habits, your healing, your boundaries, your identity, your emotional regulation, your trust, your spiritual maturity, all coming into greater agreement with what you are asking to carry. When that happens, the door does not only open, you fit through it differently. You do not enter hungry in the same way. You do not enter desperate to be validated. You do not enter needing the blessing to prove something it was never meant to prove. You do not enter trying to squeeze identity from what should simply be assignment. You enter with more peace, more awareness, more structure, more reverence, more restraint, more ability to keep the gift from becoming your God. That is alignment. And when you begin to feel that, the waiting room gets quieter inside you. Not necessarily because the outward answer has arrived yet, but because the inner war starts easing. You stop fighting the season as though it is your enemy. You start cooperating with what it is trying to build. You begin to realize that delay may not be interrupting your life. It may be synchronizing it. That changes the texture of the whole season. Now you can ask, what in me is still becoming congruent with what I am asking for? What rhythms need to mature? What beliefs need to heal? What cravings need to loosen their grip? What internal structures need strengthening so the future does not become another place where I lose myself? Those are the kinds of questions that turn waiting into wisdom, and once you begin living from that place, peace starts returning in a new way. Not as passive resignation, as trust with intelligence. You stop begging the next door to save you. You stop romanticizing every quick option. You stop fearing that stillness means abandonment. You stop treating the pause like dead space. You start seeing it as calibration, and that is where the next movement becomes necessary. Because once you understand that delay can protect you, and once you begin outgrowing premature blessing, and once you start synchronizing with true alignment, the question becomes practical. How do you actually move through this season well? How do you stop wasting the wait? How do you know what to do while life still feels paused? How do you carry the delay without letting it rot into passivity or panic? That is where the pacing matrix comes in. And once you understand it, the waiting room stops feeling like a hallway with no doors. It starts feeling like preparation with structure. It starts feeling like preparation with structure the moment you stop treating the pause like dead air and start moving through it with intention. That is what the pacing matrix is for, not to make the wait feel robotic, not to turn your spiritual life into a formula, not to pretend you can control timing just because you learned the right language. The pacing matrix is a way of staying aligned while life still feels quiet. It keeps you from collapsing into passivity on one side and panic on the other, because those are the two traps that show up most in delayed seasons. Either you get tired and go numb, or you get restless and start forcing. Either you withdraw so much that you stop cooperating with life, or you become so hungry for movement that you start mistaking noise for progress. The pacing matrix keeps you centered between those extremes. The first part is this. Receive the season honestly. You cannot move well through a waiting room you are constantly pretending not to be in. A lot of people waste delayed seasons because they spend so much energy resisting the reality of them. They keep saying, I should be farther by now. I should be somewhere else. I should not still be here. This should have happened already. And while those thoughts may feel understandable, they keep your spirit in conflict with the ground beneath your feet. You cannot find peace in a season you keep insulting. That sentence matters. Receiving the season honestly does not mean you love every part of it. It means you stop lying about where you are. You stop performing fake ease. You stop acting as though nothing in you feels stretched. You stop speaking to yourself with contempt because your timeline has not matched your imagination. You tell the truth. I am waiting. I do feel frustrated sometimes. I do feel the ache of delay. I do wish some things had moved by now. And still, I will not turn this season into evidence that God has abandoned me. That kind of honesty is holy. It takes the pressure off performance. It lets your prayer life become real again. It lets your heart exhale. It gives your soul a place to stand. Because peace does not enter where denial is running the room. The second part of the pacing matrix is this. Measure what is maturing, not only what is missing. This changes everything in a delayed season. When people feel paused, they often stare only at absence. No open door yet. No final answer yet. No visible breakthrough yet. No major release yet. And because they are measuring their life only by what has not arrived, they miss what has been developing quietly the whole time. Your patience may be deeper now. Your appetite may be cleaner now. Your instincts may be sharper now. Your relationships may be more honest now. Your boundaries may be stronger now. Your sense of identity may be less attached to public proof now. Your dependence on noise may be breaking. Your prayer may be getting more honest. Your standards may be rising. Your need to rush may be weakening. Those are not small things. That is maturity. And mature people carry blessing differently than hungry people do. This is why the waiting room can look externally still while something major is being built internally. The structure is changing. The old version of you is losing authority. The version of you that needed outer movement every week just to feel stable is being slowly replaced by someone who can remain faithful, awake, and grounded even when life is quiet. That is growth, but you will miss it if you only stare at what has not arrived yet. So ask yourself better questions. What is stronger in me now than it was a year ago? What am I no longer willing to settle for? What old patterns have lost power in this quiet season? What cravings have weakened? What part of my character has become sturdier? What have I learned to hold without collapsing? Those are the measurements that keep hope alive without making hope shallow. Then comes the third part. Participate without forcing. This is one of the hardest lessons in pause seasons because many people only know two modes. They either sit back and do nothing, or they try to drag life forward with raw willpower. But alignment does not live in either extreme. It asks for participation without panic. That means you keep showing up where truth tells you to show up. You keep tending what is in front of you. You keep learning. You keep refining. You keep refining. You keep becoming reliable in small things. You keep making wise decisions with the part of life already in your hands. You keep honoring your body, your space, your habits, your finances, your spirit. You keep building a life that can support what you say you want, but you stop trying to manufacture release just because the silence makes you uncomfortable. That difference matters. There is a huge difference between preparing and grasping. Preparing has peace in it. Grasping has fear in it. Preparing strengthens your house. Grasping keeps running out to the curb to see if the package is there yet. The waiting room becomes gentler when you stop standing at the door every 5 minutes. You begin to realize that not every day needs dramatic evidence in order to still be useful. Some days are foundation days. Some days are pruning days. Some days are recovery days. Some days are learning days. Some days are only asking you to remain clean in heart and steady in rhythm. That is still movement. Hidden movement is still movement. Then comes the fourth part of the pacing matrix. Watch what you are romanticizing. Delayed seasons have a way of turning imagined futures into emotional fantasy. You begin thinking the next chapter will solve more than it actually can. You think once the door opens, peace will finally settle. Once the relationship arrives, loneliness will disappear. Once the platform grows, insecurity will fade. Once the money comes, the tension will leave. Once the opportunity breaks through, you will finally feel seen. Be careful there. A blessing is not meant to replace God. A new season is not meant to become your emotional savior. A release is not meant to carry all the weight of your identity. That is why this part of the matrix matters so much. It teaches you to stop loading the future with responsibilities it was never designed to carry. The next chapter may be beautiful, but it will still require maturity. It may bring relief in some ways, but it will not fix the places inside you that only truth, healing, discipline, and God can address. The more honestly you see that, the less desperate you become. You still desire the door. You still pray for the answer. You still prepare with expectancy. But you stop worshiping the imagined arrival. That frees your spirit, because now your peace is not being held hostage by a single outcome. Now your hope can breathe. Now you can want something deeply without needing it to rescue you from yourself. That is healthy expectancy. Then comes the fifth part. Stay synchronized with peace, not pressure. This is where many delayed seasons become truly transformative. Pressure says hurry. Pressure says prove. Pressure says grab. Pressure says compare. Pressure says everybody else is moving, so you are in danger if you do not move too. Pressure says take whatever opens next before life leaves you behind. Peace sounds different. Peace may still stretch you, but it does not scramble you. Peace may call you forward, but it does not make you betray yourself to get there. Peace may ask for courage, but it does not demand panic. Peace does not need desperation to get you into position. This is how you know the difference between divine pacing and emotional urgency. Divine pacing may feel slow at times, but it preserves your center. Emotional urgency may feel exciting at first, but it usually costs your center. That is why the pacing matrix is not just practical, it is protective. It keeps checking the atmosphere of your movement. Are you preparing from trust or pushing from fear? Are you making wise adjustments, or are you trying to outrun the discomfort of waiting? Are you following peace, or are you obeying pressure with a spiritual vocabulary on top of it? Those questions will save people from so much self-betrayal. And once you begin moving with that kind of pacing, something changes. The waiting room stops feeling like a place where your life is paused and starts feeling like a place where your pace is being taught. That is a profound difference. Because many people do not need faster lives. They need truer pace. A pace that their soul can sustain. A pace that their nervous system can survive. A pace that does not make them disappear from themselves. A pace that allows the blessing to land without immediately turning it into chaos. That is what heaven often protects through delay. And once the pacing begins settling in you, you start getting prepared for something even more important than the answer itself. You start preparing for the release. That is where many people think the work is over. They say, once the door opens, then I can relax. Once the call comes, then I will be ready. Once the blessing arrives, then I will figure it out. But that is not how wise preparation works. Release does not begin on the day the thing appears. Release begins in the season before it, when your life is still quiet enough to be arranged on purpose. Preparing for the release means you start asking, what kind of person do I want to be when this comes? How do I want to carry it? What rhythms need to be in place so arrival does not destabilize me? What habits need strengthening now, while life is still slow enough to build them without distraction? If you are praying for more responsibility, prepare your structure. If you are praying for healthy love, prepare your honesty. If you are praying for greater opportunity, prepare your discipline. If you are praying for visibility, prepare your humility. If you are praying for increase, prepare your stewardship. If you are praying for a new environment, prepare your nervous system not to confuse unfamiliarity with danger and rush back to smaller spaces just because they feel known. That is preparation, and some of it is very unglamorous. It may look like sleep. It may look like paying off what you can. It may look like cleaning your environment. It may look like telling the truth more consistently. It may look like strengthening the routines you always abandon when emotion rises. It may look like finally addressing the habits that would sabotage the next level if they came with you unchanged. It may look like learning to hold joy without immediately becoming afraid of losing it. It may look like learning not to announce every seed before it has roots. Preparation is rarely flashy, but it makes release gentler. Because when the door finally opens, you do not want to meet it as a stranger to yourself. You do not want the blessing to arrive and expose that your internal life is still too disordered to hold it. You do not want the answer to come only for you to realize you built no rhythm strong enough to support it. That is why hidden seasons are so generous, even when they feel quiet. They give you time to make your life more congruent with what you say you are ready for. And this is not just practical. It is deeply spiritual, because preparing for the release is an act of trust. It says, I believe enough in what is coming that I am willing to honor it before I can touch it. I am willing to build for it. I am willing to clear room for it. I am willing to become more honest, more grounded, more stable, more disciplined, more aligned, even while the outward answer is still beyond my sight. That kind of preparation dignifies the promise. It says the future will not have to drag me into readiness at the last minute. I am cooperating now. And that is where peace starts becoming less fragile in the waiting room. You are no longer just enduring. You are not merely counting days. You are not only surviving the silence. You are building capacity with reverence. That changes the entire atmosphere of the season. Now the quiet has purpose. Now the delay has shape. Now the hidden days are not empty. Now your life is not on pause, in the way fear once told you it was. It is being paced. It is being filtered. It is being strengthened. It is being made more congruent with what is true. That realization can bring a deep kind of rest. Not the rest of giving up. The rest of no longer wrestling every day with the assumption that the waiting room is your enemy. Because it is not. The waiting room may be where your desperation dies, where your timing gets purified, where your identity stops leaning so hard on outcomes, where your hunger gets made wise, where your character becomes strong enough to carry what your prayers have been reaching toward. And when that day of release comes, you will often see something clearly that you could not see while you were still in the room. The delay was not empty. It was full. Full of reinforcement. Full of filtering. Full of hidden mercy. Full of preparation you would have skipped if life had moved at the speed of your impatience. That is why peace can live here now. Not because every question is answered. Not because every ache is gone. Not because comparison never whispers again. But because your interpretation is changed. You are no longer saying, my life is on pause because heaven forgot me. You are saying, my life is being paced because what is coming deserves a steadier version of me. That is a different spirit entirely. And maybe that is the word someone listening needs most right now. You are not late because your life does not look loud. You are not forgotten because your season is hidden. You are not disqualified because the door has not opened yet. You are not being punished because the room is quiet. And you are not weak because waiting has stretched you. You are being prepared in ways that do not always make sense from the outside. So be gentle with yourself here. Stop mocking the season you are living in. Stop cursing the room that may be covering you. Stop calling yourself behind because your path has not matched someone else's pace. Stop assuming silence means absence. Stop telling yourself that nothing is happening just because nothing is public yet. A lot is happening. If this message is putting words to what your spirit has been carrying, let that be known. Keep tending what is in your hands. Keep honoring peace over pressure. Keep letting the wrong appetite die. Keep measuring what is maturing. Keep building the rhythms that can hold what is coming. Keep trusting that delay is not always denial. Sometimes it is mercy with a door still closed for your sake. And when the release comes, receive it with the steadiness this season has been building in you. Do not rush past what this waiting taught you. Do not forget the wisdom that was formed in quiet. Do not drop the rhythms that kept you anchored. Do not abandon the hidden lessons once the visible answer arrives. Carry the blessing with the same reverence that helped you survive the delay, because that is the real victory. Not just that the door opened, but that when it opened, you were finally strong enough to walk through it without leaving yourself behind. If this spoke to your spirit, leave your testimony in the comments and pass this message to someone who needs peace in their waiting room today.